Week 10 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few players I look to buy and trade for this week. The first player, DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears. DJ Moore, it's been a struggle for him, no doubt about it. I've said it a lot in the videos this season. So 3 games in a row now failed to reach double-digit fantasy points for fantasy owners in the spare team. So DJ Moore, he's had some good matchups on paper, but him and Caleb Williams just aren't on the same page. Week 6 versus Jacksonville, 4 catches, 20 yards. Week 8 at Washington, 2 catches, 27 yards. And Week 9 at the Cardinals, 4 catches, just 33 yards. So the targets are definitely there for DJ Moore, but he's not going out there right now. We're making plays for the Chicago Bear team, and Caleb Williams, I believe in his first season, he's been very inconsistent for this Chicago Bear team, where DJ Moore, his numbers have dropped off weekly, and right now I don't think you have to give up much to get him on your fantasy roster. Like I said, 3 games in a row is a lot to fail to reach double-digit fantasy points. So we're more struggling over the last couple weeks in this Bear offense the last 2 weeks, only scoring 24 points combined in these ball games. He's definitely a buy low player and a cheap discount this week. The next player, Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Thomas Jr. definitely not 100% dealing with the rib injury, but he gutted it out and played through it for this Jacksonville Jaguar team in an almost comeback victory at the Philadelphia Eagles. So Thomas Jr., he's been solid majority of the season, but coming off a bad game like this, definitely a buy low candidate. I still believe you got to pay a decent price, but obviously the stock went down with the injury and also as well with the bad performance of the last few games. Week 7 versus the Pats, 5 catches, 89 yards, a touchdown, 2-point conversion. Week 8 versus Green Bay, 3 catches, 60 yards, a touchdown. And Week 9 at Philly, 2 catches, 22 yards, a 2-point conversion. So Week 10, a great matchup versus the Minnesota Vikings. Give up the most fantasy points to wide receivers on the season. And Brian Thomas, he could run all the routes. He could go deep. Him and Trevor Lawrence have a good rapport. The only downside with him right now, obviously, is the injury. And even in big games this season, he hasn't been targeted a whole lot, is Brian Thomas. But right now, definitely a buy low candidate this week after coming off a bad performance. Next buy low is Marvin Harrison Jr., another rookie of the Arizona Cardinals. It seems like every other game is a good game for Marvin Harrison, just as what we've seen. And he's definitely been a bust where he's been taken ADP-wise, 2nd, 3rd round in most fantasy drafts. So the last few weeks for Marvin, Week 7 versus the Chargers, 3 catches, 21 yards. Week 8, a big game at the Dolphins, 6 catches, 111 yards, found the end zone. In Week 9 versus the Bears, only 2 catches, 34 yards, and a fumble loss in that one. So Marvin Harrison's a great talent, but Kyler Murray, he's going to have those games where he's not throwing the football a whole lot. And also Trey McBride, I believe, might be the number 1 passing option in this offense. So Marvin Harrison, I still believe, is a great talent. He's still a rookie where there's going to be ups and downs. But like I said, he's definitely been a bust where he was taken in fantasy leagues. If he was taken 4th or 5th round, it was more justifiable with his numbers. But where he was taken 2nd, 3rd round, obviously it isn't. So maybe the Marvin Harrison owner is frustrated and he would trade him off this week. The next player, Amari Cooper of the Buffalo Bills. So Cooper, he missed last week's ball game with the injury. The wrist injury is Amari Cooper. And we know he's a good route runner and a playmaker. And obviously the play with Josh Allen, his numbers are going to be good. I know he's still got to pick up the playbook. The trade was only a couple weeks. But now sitting this one out, getting his legs under him, and possibly returning in Week 10 here at Indianapolis, I think it's a good spot. So with Cooper, his numbers down the whole season. And obviously, it was just a train wreck over there in Cleveland. Getting traded to Buffalo obviously was a big-time thing. And I think he's going to bounce back and get things going while he's healthy. Week 7 versus Tennessee, 4 catches, 66 yards, a touchdown. Week 8, non-existent, a catch, 3 yards. And then Week 9, like I said, he was out with the wrist injury. So I believe he returns in this ball game at Indianapolis. Him and Josh Allen got to get the rapport down. But Amari Cooper, he's a professional. He's a good route runner, and even getting up there at age a little bit where he might have lost a step, I still believe he can help fantasy owners and put up numbers as the season approaches. Next player, Nick Chubb of the Cleveland Browns. Nick Chubb, another player that has to get his legs under him, coming off a devastating knee injury last season. And this team, it's been bad all year long for Cleveland. So Nick Chubb in 3 games since the return this year. Week 7 versus Cincinnati, 11 carries, 22 yards, a touchdown, a catch, 10 yards. Week 8 versus Baltimore, 16 carries, 52 yards. And Week 9 versus the Chargers, 15 carries, 39 yards, a catch, -4 yards. So Week 10, they run by Cleveland Brown team. But Nick Chubb, he got 3 games under his belt. It takes a few games for running backs to get going, coming off the ACL, MCL injuries. We saw last season with Breece Hall, and then he really took off after he got his legs under him and got the rust off. So I think that could be the same case for Nick Chubb, even though he plays in an offense where they're trailing early and often, and we know he's not much of a pass catcher out of the backfield. But right now, I think Nick Chubb can help fantasy owners here in the second half of the year, and he's definitely a play I would look to buy low this week. The next player, Jay Stroud of the Houston Texans. So Stroud was on the list last week, and he's on it once again this week. And I know Nico Collins most likely returning to the lineup for this Houston Texan team here in Week 10. So CJ Stroud, he's a good talent, no doubt about it. Numbers definitely been down the last 3 weeks, though, with the injuries. Week 7 in Green Bay, 86 pass yards, 19 rush yards. Week 8 versus Indianapolis, 285 pass yards, a touchdown, a fumble loss. And Week 9, the New York Jets, 191 pass yards, 59 rush yards, a fumble loss. So that was without Diggs, who's obviously out for the season, Nico Collins, who's returning this week. But I think the numbers get back on par, because we saw last season he had the monster season only operating in the offense when Nico Collins and Tank Dell. So Tank Dell's healthy. He had a big ball game last week, 6 catches, 126 yards, and a touchdown. And obviously Collins is returning this week. So Stroud getting Nico back in the lineup and getting the offense back together from last season. I believe he's going to start putting up big ball games. And it's a good matchup, Week 10 versus Detroit. It's possibly a shootout, so he's a buy low player this week. And the final player look to buy and trade for is Dalton Kincaid of the Buffalo Bills. So Kincaid, I believe he's been a solid tight end this season. We know the position has been inconsistent all season long. Kincaid, though, he's had 7 or more fantasy points 4 weeks in a row for this Buffalo Bill team. Week 7 versus Tennessee, 3 catches, 52 yards. Week 8 at Seattle, 4 catches, 31 yards, a touchdown. And Week 9 versus the Dolphins, 4 catches, 32 yards, but he had 10 targets. But also I know Amari Cooper was out of that ball game. But the funny thing is, with Cooper in the lineup, it opens everything up in this passing game. And we've seen receivers like Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir have big games with Cooper in the lineup with attention rolling his way. And Dalton Kincaid work the middle of the field to make plays. So Kincaid, he's been decent for the most part. Like I said, some weeks good weeks, some weeks off weeks. But 7 or more fantasy points for the most part for Kincaid. And right now, he's definitely a buy low candidate under the radar. In the next 2 weeks, he's got good matchups coming up. Week 10 in Indianapolis, 4th most fantasy points to tight ends on the year. And then Week 11 versus Kansas City, believe it or not, the most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. That's a few plays I look to buy and trade for Week 10 of the fantasy football season.